branch under Elon Musk. Is there not an inconsistency about calling for the elimination of the Department of Education? And yet we've heard from some of your colleagues here this morning, we don't want women be playing sports with men. And aren't you ceding back that power then as it pertains to education if you eliminate the Department of Education?
No, look, I got to challenge the premise of the question, Chad. You know me. I'm a fierce advocate and defender of Article 1. I mean, we are the legislative branch. There's a reason the Founding Fathers put the Congress, the legislative branch, as the first article in the Constitution, and we're going to vigorously defend that. But what's happening right now, I think there's a gross overreaction in the media to what is happening. The executive branch of government in our system has the right to evaluate how executive branch agencies are operating and to ensure that not only the intent of Congress in funding mechanisms, but also the stewardship of precious American taxpayer dollars is being handled well. That's what they're doing by putting a pause on some of these agencies and by evaluating them, by doing these internal audits. That is a long overdue, much welcome development. That's what the American people demand and deserve. And that's what's happening. So we don't see this as a threat to Article 1 at all. We see this as an active, engaged, committed executive branch authority doing what the executive branch should do.
He's lying. Hey, I'm FPWellman, host of On Democracy Sunday. You're here, right? Live. We're right here live Sunday. And glad to have you back. I wanted to run that clip first because, like I said, he's lying. But the fact is the spin they're trying to do and the assault on our government, the dismantling of our government is going to frame a lot of our conversations today. We've got another great show. I'm thrilled to have our first senator, sitting Senator Lisa Blunt Rochester will join us live in a few minutes. We're going to have Indivisible co-founder Leah Greenberg with us. We're going to have an incredible panel with actress Sebrina Purcell and our friend Charlotte Clymer. I mean, it's just a great show. But I frame a lot with that opening comment. And that, by the way, was a Fox News reporter asking Speaker Mike Johnson, have you walked away from your Article 1 duties? And Johnson tries to spin it as they're an audit. Look, when you announce you're dismantling an entire agency, the USAID, that's not an audit. That's a shutdown. So we're going to have a lot to talk about, and we need to get going with it. The good news is, things have been, a lot can happen in a week. Obviously, a lot can happen in 15 minutes these days in D.C. And the good news, though, is Democrats are rolling in hot. I mean, last week, USAID was being shot down. Andy Kim was there. Senator Andy Kim was there the next morning, pounding on the door, followed by dozens of other Democrats. There's a lot happening. We're going to talk about that later here. But the lawsuits are flying. I mean, things are starting to happen. A lot of people are really pushing hard. So that's why I'm thrilled to have it. Look, the news is insane, right? There's been a blitz, right? A billionaire blitz it's been a chaotic week. Musk has dove in, has spread out across the government, and their mission is clear. He and his aides are moving to control, automate, and frankly, diminish hundreds, if not thousands, of public functions. In less than 3 weeks, Musk Doge has followed the same playbook at agency after agency. What they're doing is they install loyalists, small ones in leadership. They hoover up all the internal data they can grab their hands on, including sensitive and sometimes classified information. They gain control of the flow of funds, and then they're using whatever means they can. And let's be honest, not all of them are legal, okay? Not all of them are legal, these things. And so they're using those to control payments and stop paying things that they deem as, corrupt or otherwise. The Doge campaign has generated chaos on a near hourly basis in DC, with information flowing off, with leaks, reports coming out. It's all very carefully choreographed in service of an agenda that really looks to seriously dismantle our government. The only way to determine it is dismantle our government. And somebody put it, and we'll talk about it more later, this isn't a constitutional crisis at this point. It's a constitutional destruction at this point is what they're doing. To say it's a crisis really does sort of undermine what they're trying to do. I mean, they're talking about asserting power and shrink it to levels unseen in over 20 years. And the aim is definitely a diminished government that exerts less oversight over private business, delivers fewer services, and comprises a smaller share of the U.S. economy, but is far more responsive to the president and the billionaires who are the ones doing this. Although Elon Musk's campaign is supported by Trump and his presence, there is resistance emerging in federal courts, finally, among federal employee unions, parts of Congress, which we'll talk about in a little while. Allies say his critics underestimate the billionaire's talent for ripping things apart, and that's what he's doing. The storm that they've elicited has really impacted things. Late Friday, a federal judge of Washington declined to block Doge access to Labor Department data data, but expressed concern that young Doge staffers who have never had any training with respect to add routine information to outgoing treasury, have of handling confidential information, or accessing the medical and financial records of millions of Americans are accessing this data. On Saturday, a judge in New York, a federal judge, did temporarily block Doge staff from accessing sensitive payment systems of the Treasury Department, citing the risk of irreparable harm. Okay. And someone put out a note this week, I think there was a story in Wired saying that experts are calling this the biggest data breach in U.S. history of what's occurring in real time as we watch it happening. Of course, Musk is defending himself on his own personal social media platform, saying that what they're doing is simply, listen to what he said, they're adding routine information to outgoing treasury payments to help spot fraud. It's super obvious and necessary changes that are being implemented by a long-time career. Okay, just think about what you're saying there. So someone outside is adding things to treasury payments. And who gets treasury payments? You do. Everybody does. I get my veterans payments. I get my military retirement. Contractors who get payments. Elon Musk and his team of 19 and 21-year-olds are adding things to that. Look, if they're successful, they may cut the federal workforce by 10%. And that's just sort of a conservative investment. In my opinion, if they're successful, they destroy our government completely. Let's be honest, which is the real goal, in my opinion. Right now, they're likely to get rid of people. If people don't, they put out the fork in the road memo asking people to resign. If they don't get enough, they're already warning they may start laying off people with, quote, poor performance reviews or new hires in their probationary period. In many federal jobs, you face a full year-long probationary period, if not 2 years in some healthcare positions especially. They're already threatening to lay all of those people off. I mean, for me as a veteran, let's put that in perspective. They just passed the PACT Act, which was a huge expansion of veterans healthcare. Most of the people supporting that for that new flood of money are recent hires. All those could be lost. So all the progress we've made with veterans healthcare could be dismantled in a very short time if they succeed in doing this. As much as half the government's, here's another angle, half the government's non-military real estate holdings are set to be liquidated. Half. A move that aims at closing offices and increasing commute times amid a sharp downturn in the telework ability, which is really bad. We've heard from, so here's a quote from an official at GSA. We've heard from them they want to make the buildings so crappy that people will want to leave government. The larger goal here is bring everybody back, make the buildings suck, make the commute suck, so they quit on their own. Not unlike what Musk has done at all of his companies, especially Twitter. So here's the charting part. To replace this existing civil service, Musk's allies are looking to technology. They want to use AI, of course, to get access to vast troves of government records, use databases that should be secret to be accessed, and everything else. So they want this all replaced by AI. It's troubling at the least, dangerous at the most. Another story. I mean, if that's not bad enough as it is, USAID has been cut off. So for those who don't know, the USAID is our major foreign assistance program. It gives out millions of dollars, billions of dollars, but it supports billions of dollars of programs elsewhere. So while they may have a large chunk of a program, they don't necessarily own the whole thing, but they are funding incredible amounts. They support an intricate network of small, medium, and even large organizations to deliver things from HIV medications for more than 20 million people, nutrition supplements for starving children, support for refugees, orphan children, women battered by violence around the world, all comes from USAID. That network is now unraveling. The Trump administration has frozen foreign aid 80 days and plans to gut the U.S. agency. They're talking about cutting it down to just 5% of its current workforce, if you believe such a thing. It's insanity times 100. Even large organizations are going to struggle with this, okay? The thing is you have to understand is, if you cut just 25 aid workers from a program, that's most of it, okay? That's the chunk of the people on the front line right now. A tower, even the large organizations, as one person described it, a tower of blocks may take hours to build, but you pull one of those blocks out and it collapses. He relies, for example, his organization is called the AVAC, Michael Mitchell Warren. They had 38% of their funding from USAID. So not all of it, but you've been in business. If you've been in business or anywhere, or your personal family, you lose 38% of your funding, and guess what? You're in big trouble. So there's a lot going on with that. So they're going to get rid of a lot of staff. Small organizations are going to struggle, and they're going to die. In one survey recently, about 1 in 4 nonprofits said they might last only a month if they lose their USAID funding. At best, with reserves, they may survive only 3 months at most. And this damage is compounded by President Trump's announcement that the United States will withdraw from the World Health Organization, forcing its leaders to announce cost-cutting measures of their own for all world health. So this is very bad. Along with what we expect is over 100,000 positions will be cut overseas to an estimated 50,000 will lose their jobs. Another thing we have to consider in this whole thing is that the global health chain is valued at nearly $3 billion and is expected to grow. Each year, about $2 billion in American agricultural products go out where for purchased aid overseas. This abrupt halt risks more than $450 million worth of corn, lentils, rice, other commodities that are transit in warehouses right now. Matter of fact, U.S. Senator Jerry Moran of Kansas stepped in this week to desperately call for, he's a Republican. He was calling for help with aid. He actually got some $340 million in life-saving food that's been grown in the United States, released in domestic ports. So since this freeze, they were literally sitting in the port waiting to go out. So it's insanity like this. And all this, of course, is chaos. Friday, a federal judge, yet again, has put a restraining order on the layoff of 2,500 USAID employees. So they're fighting back right now, and it'll continue to fight back. Great. We're trying to get our guests on. This is, if you see me sidetracked, it's live TV, so bear with us. Now, here's the good news. Democrats this week did start taking to the streets. Democratic lawmakers are staging protests outside federal agencies, holding resistance-themed news conferences back home, and taking social media as they try to combat President Trump's moves to make the government, remake this government his executive power. Now, they are relegated to the minority in Congress right now, so they can't do a lot. But congressional Democrats staged a protest outside USAID, as I mentioned, this week. Several dozen Democratic lawmakers came down there, pounded on the doors. The Democrats in the Senate have a greater check on Trump as his party and their House counterparts do, because they have to use the 60-vote threshold to filibuster any GOP legislation, and they could significantly delay his executive branch. Senator Brian Schatz has announced he's going to put a blanket hold on his State Department nominees. And of course, our guest coming up here shortly, Senator Lisa Rochester, has announced that she is going to stop any of his picks, frankly, for anything. So the party is making a unified stand against this. They did lose, but Russell Vought did get approved to be the budget director, but the fight will go on. Democrats in the House, of course, have a much greater disadvantage. The House can do a lot of things without them, but they are pushing back. We had Ro Khan on the show a couple weeks ago. He's looking for bolder. He's urging his colleagues to be bolder and more aggressive. And I think we'll see more of that. It's a crazy moment. Needless to say, I see your comments. It is quite a time right now to be alive in America. But we will do our very best. JJ, we have the senator with us yet? We don't. So we'll keep on talking. So the more that goes on, the longer it goes on, the more we can expect chaos in DC. I don't know if you guys saw, but this week's On Democracy podcast with FPWellman, I interviewed a gentleman named Gil Duran, who's a reporter out of Silicon Valley. Gil especially was discussing what he's been researching for years, which is this thing called the network state. And for those who don't follow it, this is sort of the roadmap that a lot of people believe that Elon Musk is following. And what this involves is essentially dismantling the government to put in place the ability for billionaires to sort of run things. They literally want to dismantle standing governments and put in their own power base, essentially billionaires running countries, privatized countries to take over the services once they've gotten rid of most of those services. If you haven't seen it, it's exclusive on Midas Touch Network, which is where we will be broadcasting On Democracy FP11 from now on, exclusively on the Midas Touch Network, as well as separate stuff right here on the On Democracy channel. So we've got a lot going on. We're going to have our guests joining us. We're doing some technical stuff in the background, I think. So as you know, I have to tap dance and all. In the meantime, we are seeing the effect downstream. I am hearing from aides, friends downrange. For example, one of my former interpreters works for an organization in Kirkuk, Iraq. The funding for his organization came from the USAID. They provided refugee support for Kurds, for other refugees within Iraq, internal refugees. That funding is probably get cut. I'm hearing that all the way from Iraqis telling me that political actions here are affecting them. In the past, we did talk about the fact that Afghan refugees have been cut off. Our own Afghan folks have been stuck. These are family members, service members. For those who understand, we actually had a situation where many of our Afghan partners who came over here in the last few years have since joined the military that helped them, and they have family members still stuck in Afghanistan. They were supposed to come over when he froze the refugee programs. Guess what? They got stuck. So actual military family members stuck in Afghanistan, and the list goes on and on as far as the concerns we have with who can get help and who's not, and how it's falling apart. So it's really a challenging time in the U.S. right now for those who want to try and fight back against this continuing decline of where we face and what we do. So in the meantime, we were going to try and talk to some folks. We got them coming in. We have some technical challenges, it seems like, getting them online. Hopefully they'll join us shortly. I think JJ is actually on the phone as we speak, talking to those folks. In other news, it's just on the veterans side, there are rumors that there's a Doge staffer in the VA. I've actually heard his name, and we haven't published it yet. And they are mucking about right there at VA. The question is, what are they mucking about in? Millions of records of healthcare, millions of records of veterans payments. Where else will they be able to impact, and what will happen? What I'm hearing consistently, I know you guys are probably hearing from your friends and family, is that we've got a real problem of a real fear. And what's terrifying is last year, Russell Vaught, who's now OMB chief, literally said in a speech that one of the goals of a new Trump administration would be to strike terror into the hearts of government employees. And, I don't want to admit to them, but it seems to have worked. There are a lot of very scared government employees right now who are afraid for their lives, their livelihood, and their futures. And that's not how to run a government, especially one that's had 3 aviation accidents in the last 3 weeks, right? Because this is going to shock you, but the people that run our towers are government employees. And so we are really looking at this hard because the danger to America as a country is real and could affect us in ways that are unimaginable. So we'll continue to look at that, but that's whether it bothers us. And these are the people being approved. Meantime, you've got all of these cabinet secretaries running around the country acting as if they don't actually have jobs. Kristi Noem is down in Texas doing her thing, taking pictures and getting her hair extensions and looking pretty on a horse. It's just kind of nuts right now. We've also got Sean Duffy, the transportation secretary, spent most of his week arguing with Hillary Clinton online. You've got Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, allegedly arguing with his own former Fox News colleague, Jennifer Griffin, who's highly respected journalist, believe it, in the Pentagon, arguing with her about a story that came out. Senators are asking about his demands for an extreme makeover of his government housing. This is what the people we appointed to do the work are doing. And they're not doing it. So, which tells me their real goal was never to actually run the government. Their real goal was to tear it down and look pretty while Elon Musk does his thing. It's the smoke and mirrors we've been talking about since we started this whole thing. So I am, we'll continue to watch this and see how it unfolds and everything else. So look, JJ, how are we doing back there, man? Oh, there she is right there. So the perfect timing, and here she is. Yeah, I love it. You gotta love timing. Let's go ahead and bring the senator in. Well, appreciate it. And now we're live. Oh, we got split screens going on. JJ's having a rough morning. He's on the phone. Man, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. You like that? JJ,
Can you see me?
I can see it. This is live. This is how it goes, man. We really appreciate you joining us. Thank you. I'm thrilled to have you. We spoke back, I think, May. So congratulations on your victory, and thank you for your patience in joining us as we get things crazy.
Fred, I'm glad to be on. I'm glad what you're doing, particularly in this present moment. And actually, we talked 2 times last year.
Yeah.
because the second time was actually really when I unveiled my veterans plan.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
I think that, like, even if I just start right there, that it is crazy to me that instead of talking about a veterans plan, instead of us talking about lowering the cost of goods for Americans, we are literally talking about saving our country, our
Right.
democracy, and our
That's
private rights, and our services. I mean, a whole host of things. And so I didn't expect to come on and have to talk about these kind of topics this soon into
yeah.
my swearing in. But I'm just glad you're on the job, and glad to be on it with you.
We're glad to have. I love my first question. So how's it going? I mean, it has been. I
Well,
mean, you did tell me your plans, and this week you announced that you're not going to approve any more Donald Trump's appointments from now on.
right.
And tell us about that decision and what you're looking for from them.
Yeah. Well, first of all, your question, how it's going. I mean, some people might know I had never run for anything in my life until I
Yep.
ran for the House in 2016 after the unexpected passing of my husband, love of my life. And I came in 2016 with Donald Trump. I came in the House in the minority. So I'm kind of familiar with this, but this is like nothing I think people probably have ever seen in the history of this country.
Yeah.
The good thing for us is that they wrote it down in a book called Project 2025.
Yep.
And they actually not only are telegraphing, but telling us that this is all about flooding the zone, disruption. And some of it is just plain old intentional, and some of it might be mistakes that they're making. But for me, the first couple of weeks were really just about like trying to figure out how to get around the building.
Yeah.
We're in the basement of one of the office buildings, Dirksen, and we're staffing up, but we're also receiving thousands of calls from constituents
Yeah.
who are concerned, who feel this is chaos. They're fearful, even.
Right.
And so, balancing getting the work done with dealing with just the illegal and unconstitutional nature of what this president and this administration are doing has been 24/7. Matter of fact, I will leave this call and get on with the president of one of our universities here, who is thinking about how do we deal with research dollars?
Right.
How does this affect students and scholarships? And so it has been a whirlwind for so many of us. But the word I used at the end of my campaign when they asked what was my word, it was ready. We are ready. We are ready for this.
Well,
So
you're not new to Capitol Hill. You said you've been up there. You were the sole representative for Delaware before this. You kind of know how the game's played. I think it does give you something, understanding that the powers are very different between what you experience in the House versus what you experience in the Senate. So you do have more power. So when you say, "Hey, I'm not gonna vote for any more of your nominees," you're putting the gauntlet down. What do you want to hear from Trump to answer like these concerns? I mean, you're not hearing it right now, are you?
no, we're not. And I think, to your point, I have been, and I'm known for being bipartisan. I
Yep.
have been able to work on healthcare, and from everything from strengthening our supply chains to telehealth, you name it. And I walked in with the knowledge that we are here to advise and consent, and that I would meet with these individuals and give them their opportunity. And I asked them, would you push back if the president is doing something wrong or illegal? Some of them came back at me with, well, he's the president, blah, blah. I said, I've been a cabinet secretary for two governors. I know
Yep.
the impact of a cabinet secretary in terms of making good policy, having a vision, but also telling your boss when you're doing something wrong. And so many of them in the conversation said, yes, I would. Well, immediately within a week, things began to change with executive
Yeah.
orders. And so either you're lying or you don't have the power. And for me, that means that those cabinet secretaries going forward, I just, when this last executive order came out for OMB that has affected so many people already, I mean, scared so many people, I said, that's it. I'm done. They will not be able to probably stand up to him. And so, to your question, what do I want to see from him? you know, we all get it that we need to be healthier. We want to make sure our systems are efficient, but what we don't want is an unelected billionaire in our business, shutting down things. He wasn't elected, and we're talking about, Elon Musk.
Yep.
That's just a part of it. And so I think for us as the Senate, as Democrats, as people, it's just an all hands on deck moment. And I tell people, do what you do well. There's certain things that we're doing in the Senate, certain things that community members are doing, lawyers are doing, and the media. And that's another key piece because we're competing against individuals that will buy up whole media outlets
Right. Right.
or
Right.
try to shut them down.
And your whole career, we know when we talked the first time back when you're running that you've been in economic development, you've been in jobs and the economy, so it drove you into politics and seeing people not be able to pay for their groceries, right? But now we're talking about massive numbers of layoffs. I mean, you just nailed something and it's clever and it's purposeful, I think, right? The way they're doing it, the way they're hiding these numbers of how many people are going to be affected. Billions of dollars in U.S. aid. They think, oh, well, it's foreign aid, but it's billions of dollars of U.S. agriculture, right? Oh, it's just research on unnecessary science, but you're talking thousands of universities. I think they just announced here where I live in the Midwest that they're cutting the soybean lab, which is 19 departments of state-run universities like University of Missouri, all being cut. I mean, these are far-reaching economic impacts that be impossible, right?
Oh, and I think it's interesting because, first of all, let's be clear about, people saying that, well, we have a mandate, blah, blah. Okay, he got what, 75 million
Yeah.
or 77 million votes, and Kamala got 75. It ain't like it was like a gazillion people voted
Yep.
just for him. The second thing, as you mentioned, I was like thinking just from the health perspective. I'm on the health committee in Congress, and I was on the health subcommittee in the House. Just from a health perspective, USAID, disease prevention, AIDS, Ebola, COVID, they don't stop at borders.
No.
Okay.
Right.
Community health centers. This week, I addressed 2,300 members of the National Association of Community Health Centers. Literally, before I stepped onto the stage, I got an alert that community health centers in Virginia were shutting down. This impacts the kid that doesn't get that vaccine or doesn't get that care and goes to school. And
Right.
that affects everybody's kids, whether you voted for Trump or not. You know, that and the fear of going in if you're undocumented. That's
Yep.
another impact. Medicaid, kids with disabilities, our veterans. So we could literally, avian flu, you mentioned our farmers. You could literally go down and check off all of the boxes of people who are going to be impacted. And that's what I said on the House floor when I held the floor for the amount of time that I had. You probably saw that
Yep.
the senators, we held that floor for 30 hours, went overnight, and we will
Love it.
continue to do stuff like that.
Love
I
it.
come out, forcefully to say, I'm not going to support these nominees. We will continue to do that. But we're looking at legislation, litigation, bills, oversight, like shadow hearings and things like that to call attention. Because this stuff is not going to age well, and these individuals won't when we see the impact of what they've done. And I think even thinking about communication and how we communicate out.
Yeah.
And then the last one is community. This is an all hands on deck, like I said. We did, myself, Senator Coons, and Sarah McBride, our Congresswoman, did a conversation on Zoom with 250 nonprofits, a governor, our AG, to say we're in this, we're working together. And I think that's my message to everybody is, we have a saying in the Black church that trouble don't last always. It doesn't, but we got to be ready. We got to work together. That's the other thing. Sticks in a bundle are unbreakable. African
Yep.
proverb for Black History Month. We got to stick together, and we will make it through this. But that's how we're going to do it. We
Yeah.
got to. Each person do what you do best at this present moment.
Yeah, it's truly an an all hands on deck kind of moment, isn't it, man? It's like, and I know you've been getting beat up. I read the story when we started about how 1,600 calls a day, and I know that's got to be hard. But
You know what?
it's
Before you jump off of that, Fred, that's actually not a bad thing.
yeah,
I want people to be engaged.
Yep.
And I would tell people, write in to on our websites, because like mine is blunt.rochester.senate.gov, because we want to show what the impact is. When I stood on that floor for over 30 minutes talking, I read from Delawareans what they told me. So you go ahead and you reach out to your representatives. It's best. For me, I like the written, the
Yeah.
story. What does
Yeah.
this mean to you? And what do you think we should do? Delawareans actually said, you know what? You should not vote for any more of these people. Now, I knew what I was going to do, but it helped to know that they had my back and that I have theirs.
I'll let you go. I know you've got to go to that meeting. And I can't thank you enough for joining us, Senator. I really appreciate it. Congratulations on your win again. And I'll be calling you again. I know you've got a great staff to let me harass them. So
Thank
thank
you,
you so
Fred.
much. Good
Take
luck. Keep
care.
in the fight, man. Thank you for being in the fight.
Bye-bye.
I know. Man, I'm a big fan. And that was Senator Blunt Rochester. She's one of the ones standing up. She's saying, she draw the line. Said, "Here's no more of these nominees. We're not playing normal politics." And you could tell she is a person who has spent her career in public and politics and as a CEO of a company in doing those things where you work together. But this is an unusual moment. This is a moment of all hands on deck. So I love to keep talking about that. We're going to talk shortly with the Indivisible co-founder Leah Greenberg, who was able to take time for us. Actually, we spoke on Friday. In the meantime, as always, we always have a great panel, and it's always not about politics because you know why? We're all going to lose our minds if that's all we think about all the time. And so I'm thrilled to start our panel with a really wonderful group of people who, as always, Charlotte's joining us. But in the meantime, let's bring on the panel, JJ. Today, we've got an incredible group. So first, we're going to have actress Sebrina Purcell, who's born and raised in Queens, New York. She's appeared in a host of series of films, including recent regular appearances on 911 Lone Star. With her deep roots in New York, she's committed to telling strong, empathetic stories that highlight marginalized communities through her acting and producing. She's also a military spouse. Sabrina, welcome to here. Glad to have you. Charlotte, hopefully you'll join us. Charlotte, of course, joins us again from DC. Hopefully, she's committed activist, political analyst. She shares unique perspectives in her popular Substack, Charlotte's Web Thoughts. She is also an Army veteran like me, and we're glad to have Charlotte too. Get Charlotte on the screen too. I think I see. Yeah. Oh well, it's all good. Sabrina, welcome. You've had glad you joined us. By the way, I think we were supposed to join us a couple of weeks ago. You're finally able to join us. I'm thrilled to have you. Thanks for joining us. And where are
No,
you in
thank
LA
you for
right now?
having me. I'm sorry?
Are you in LA right now?
I am. I live in Los Angeles.
I love it. And you've got, before we get going, hi, Charlotte, man, it's great to see you. Sabrina, I was told you had a new screen last night. You portray Kathleen Collins in a new short film. Can you tell us about that? I'd love to hear more about what you're doing.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so the name of the film is called For the Love. It's a short film that's hopefully going to turn into, obviously a feature. And I portray Kathleen Collins. She's actually the first Black female filmmaker.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and unfortunately, she passed away from, I believe it was breast cancer. But here's another interesting fact, and it was such a beautiful story of how this all came about. But my best friend that I met the first day of high school in New York City, her mother is an equity stage manager,
Okay.
and so I was on set the very first day on set, and I'm like, oh my God, you know what? I should have asked if she ever met her. So I leave set that night and I call her up and we speak on the phone and she's like, you know what? I never met her, but I did a play about her. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so amazing. And she starts to give me even more information about this lady. And one thing that I didn't know was that she's actually credited for helping to write the I Have a Dream speech that Martin Luther King.
Good timing. Charlotte and I did the same thing. Like, wow. Yeah, that's amazing. What an amazing piece of history. And so that's just amazing. And Charlotte, welcome. I know we've had some technological issues. We've seemed to have overcome them. I'm so thrilled to see you, sister. Thank you for joining us. I was reading your Substack, which I do every day, every time you write. And you wrote a pretty passionate piece this week about, I'm sure you've heard it. Sabrina, I don't know if you've been told to get out of your country or not. Get out of your own country. Yeah, we all, and you said, hell no, right, Charlotte? Well, and that's exactly it, right? And then we've all been invited to go somewhere else, you know, and it's not happening, you know. And there's so many more important things. If you guys heard the interview with the senator before we joined, talk about healthcare, talk about the impacts on healthcare as part of these things. I know. On that note, you know, obviously we all face it. Sabrina, you've been advocating on healthcare issues, right? You've been talking about menopause, which is an issue I don't deal with, but people I love very dearly do deal with as a very important issue. And it's not talked about much. It hasn't been researched much, has it? I mean, it's a very unique place for you to put your advocacy in. Can you tell us about your advocacy on perimenopause and menopause and why you got involved in that?
Yeah, thank you so much. So one of the things that was happening to me that as I spoke to other women was the same thing. You're like, wait, there's something going on. I can't really explain it. And you would go to the doctor and they're like, oh, you're fine. They'll do the blood work. Oh, you're fine.
Yeah.
But everyone knows their body, right? And so as I started to speak to other women around the same age group, they're like, oh my gosh, yes. So it made me stop feeling like, oh, okay, I'm not going crazy.
Yep.
It's a bigger issue than what I thought. And then as I spoke to our elders, like my mother, you know, they didn't really speak about perimenopause or even menopause. Right? It's fairly new to kind of speak about that on a public scale, right? It was very like taboo. And then you speak to these women and they're like, oh yeah, I went through that, but like I still had my period or whatever it was.
Yep.
And so I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to be very open about what I'm going through so that other women feel comfortable to speak about it too. Because what can end up happening is that you feel like you're going crazy. And you're already dealing with the hormone imbalance, and then that causes depression and all kinds of things. And so the most I could do was be open and transparent about what I'm going through. And this, like, no one has the same symptoms. That's the other thing too. So maybe someone, you know, could be going through hot flashes. Another one, like their sex drive might be low, or their sex drive may be extra high. You just don't know. But you know, but you just don't know. And sometimes you can start to feel like, oh my God, am I having a mental health crisis? Am I bipolar? What's going on? So if you understand that other people are going through it too, it makes you feel so not alone. And then the other thing that I just found out really quickly, I want to say, as I'm talking to my mother about this, she, you know, she's been suffering with MS. She goes to the doctor, and my mom is about to be 70. She first went through menopause at 50. And then the doctor says, oh, you're going through menopause again. What? I didn't even know that was possible. Right? So
Wow. Yeah. I'm married. You know, my fiance is, and we're of age, right? And we were talking about this as we were talking about the show, and she caught Mel Robbins had Dr. Mary Claire Haverman on her podcast where they were talking about it. And one of the things we keep hearing is that one of the interesting things she told me, my partner told me, is that it hasn't really been studied much. That women's healthcare, you know, when her mom, who's in her 80s now, went through it, it was just like, oh, it's that time, and that was ignored. But what they're finding is that women of our I'm Gen X, senior Gen X, I admit it, but that now they're doctors, right? They're senior doctors. They're just senior Gen X women doctors who are saying, wait a minute, this doesn't have to just be something you got through. That there is more science occurring. I mean, that we are looking at it. And we're having these conversations because it is only fair and appropriate that women's health matters too, doesn't it?
absolutely. And what people don't realize also is that it actually starts in your late 30s.
Wow.
No one thinks about that when you think about perimenopause, menopause. You immediately think, oh, you know, obviously maybe in my 40s, late 40s or 50s or something like that, because that's what you hear from your parents or your grandparents. No, studies are now showing that it starts in your late 30s. And that's also really good to know, because if you're in your 30s, that's the last thing that you're thinking is happening with your body. Although you may realize, hey, something's a little off.
Wow. Healthcare matters, and that's in Charlotte, your community's healthcare. I mean, there's an attack on transgender care. There's a repeated attacks on the care. It's got to be putting fear in your community as well, isn't it?
That's right. And Fred, just really quickly, you both can hear me. I don't think your viewers can hear me, though, unfortunately, because there's some kind of audio syncing issue. But that's okay. Let's get this point out anyway for folks to view later. You know, Sabrina's absolutely right. I think that the core of all of these issues we're seeing is about bodily autonomy. It's about primarily white, non-trans men in this country feeling uncomfortable over the private choices that other people make over their own bodies. And whether it is trans folks or women who can get pregnant, or it's any person who wants to have some kind of healthcare over their own bodies and really make their own decisions, that is somehow deemed as a threat. I mean, we're all in this struggle together. A woman who dies in a parking lot because she doesn't have access to life-saving reproductive health care is in my struggle. And if I'm not showing up for her, then I'm not doing everything I can to make sure that we are a united front against this attack on bodily autonomy.
I could have said it better myself. And that's the thing. And it's you're absolutely right. I mean, this is, and that's kind of, if you guys saw the interview with the senator, it is an all in this together thing. There is no community, there's no separate communities anymore. When you're talking about an all out assault on everything we stand for, be it healthcare, employment, helping those in need. I mean, raising up others, refugees, the poor. I mean, this is an all out assault on all those things that make us, I was going to say Americans, you guys, but it's almost human too, right? I mean, this is a human challenge, I think, and that's what makes me nervous. So wow. Well, we're going to have to lighten the mood here. So JJ, I'm going to make you bring up. So go ahead. What do you want to say?
I'm sorry. I was listening to the senator, and I just want to add, because she gave me a bit of hope. Right now it cannot feel very hopeful within our country. And when she said trouble doesn't last always, and of course, I've been to Black churches, and I'm like, oh my God, yes, I needed to hear that. Just give me a little bit of hope. I think everybody's like trying to hold on to just some hope right now, and I was so happy that she said this. I just wanted to repeat it because it just made me feel
I'm a fan. I know I'm supposed to be like the neutral observer media guy, but I'm not. I had a chance to interview Senator when she was a congressman, and this is who she is. That's why I was thrilled, and I believe, and she stands by her principles. I mean, and knowing who she is as a person, the idea she said, no, I'm not voting for any more of your nominees is so truly out of character for her, really, to be honest with you. But it also says that she grasped the moment. And I don't know, Charlotte, how you feel. You're in DC, but I kind of felt like our leaders are starting to grasp the moment more in the last week, at least. I mean, from Andy Kim, especially with like that first one on Monday where Andy Kim showed up at the USAID. I know you live. I don't know if you did any protests in DC. Have you done any protests, Charlotte? Yep.
Yeah, no, I went to the USA protest on Tuesday, I believe it was. It's been frustrating, I think, to watch most Democratic lawmakers not really have a plan for this week. And look, I'm a proud Democrat. I love my party. I think our party is right on the issues. But what was frustrating is that in the 11 weeks between Election Day and Inauguration Day, there was no sense of organizing among Democratic leadership to get ready for this moment. I've been pretty disappointed over that, to be honest with you. But that's okay. This week hit. I think that we were caught off guard, but Democratic leaders have really tried to spend the last few days getting their rear ends in gear and making sure they're showing up. And now we're starting to see action. We're starting to see some coordination. And I think that what we're going to see this next week is a lot more intentionality, a lot more organization, and a lot better messaging, and certainly a hell of a lot better than it's been over the past month. So I'm optimistic about what we're about to see.
Good. We love optimism. And with that note, let's bring up the panel pick. Sebrina, it's their first time. Charlotte suffered through this before, so we got two Charlottes today. Charlotte, I warned you. I warned you, Charlotte, that we're going to make so for the and Smorgasbord's the first one. And why? Because she foolishly put on Facebook that she's been mispronouncing the word. And I thought of the ways that, and you're an actress, Sebrina. I'm sure there's words that you are constantly, there you go. See, this is how it works, you guys. If you happen to be a friend of mine and I see you posting on social media, I'm going to use it against you. I'm just that guy. And so Charlotte foolishly posted her embarrassment. But I guess I was thinking of words. I'm sure as an actress, you've got it on camera and there's a word that you... That's it. Get used to it, sister. What about you, Sebrina? Any words you get wrong? Like smorgasbord?
You know, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of words that I get wrong, to be honest with you. So I do a lot of research anytime I get a script. I'm like using that dictionary app. How do I say this? Oh my gosh. But here's a funny fact. So I'm such a New Yorker, like born and raised, and I've done a lot of vocal training. I used to
Okay.
sound. Hers is more of exaggerated, but I used to kind of sound like Fran Drescher from The Nanny.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. Wow. I did not know that.
I know. I've done a lot of vocal work. Trust me. And so there's certain words with my New York accent that I just could not say. And now I'm a little nervous to even say it. And I think like pal. I'm probably not even saying it right. Oh my God. like a pail.
Yeah.
Pail.
Yeah.
I could not. I'm so embarrassed.
This is what we do. We bring you on here to embarrass you, Charlotte. Go ahead. Let's hear your. This is what we do, Sebrina. But Charlotte, it's your turn. Give us your words other than smorgasbord. I gotta make her wait.
Other than smorgasbord. Oh, okay. So when I was a kid, I read phonetically. Excuse me. I did not read phonetically. I would memorize the words I read in books, and I would just pronounce them the way they looked.
Yeah.
So, for example, when I was a kid, I pronounced Buchanan Buchanan.
Okay, I can see that.
I pronounced Senate Senate. I have no idea why. Yeah. So, but Sebrina is an expert in public speaking and elocution, and I am decidedly not. So it's good that we at least have somebody on this panel who it has some verbal comfort with the English language.
Look, I am not, yeah, because I'm not that guy either, and the running joke here at the Wellman Schaefer home is that I'm the idiot who is like, you really went to Harvard? Because damn, dude, it's like, because I get so many wrong, and luckily I'm married to an English major. That saves me on a daily basis, and when I write, and plus I'm a terrible writer. I mean, the sense, I know you write your own stuff too, Charlotte, but like Heather was like, hey, that's a great newsletter you just put out. Come on over here so we can edit all the typos. Like, okay, thanks. I went to Harvard.
I'm the same way. I promise you, I'm the same way. One of the things, so this is like a little story that I have. My father's Puerto Rican, and I went to a couple of different schools between going to Catholic school and going to public school. So for like elementary school, I would go to a bunch of different schools. And every time I would go to a new school, because for some reason they saw Puerto Rican, they would put me in ESL classes. But I don't speak Spanish, and I was really shy. So I would sit in the class and not say anything. And the time, though, where I was supposed to learn how to read. So for the longest time, there's a lot of like major things about the English language that I didn't learn in those years because I was so shy and I didn't say anything. I was just sitting in the ESL class.
And you're an actress now. So
and now I'm an actress and I have to read every day and speak every day.
I'm not sure what to say to that. All right. Well, all right. Bring the panel back. Bring the picks back up, JJ. Bring the chicks up. I think I subverted you, Charlotte. I think it's your turn. By the way, that last one, I don't know if I mentioned at the beginning of the show, but I should have before the panel. But all three, this is an all Army panel, by the way, because while Charlotte and I are veterans, I do know I got tipped off, Sebrina, you were an Army spouse for a while, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
Yeah, Charlotte, I didn't tell you that. I should have tipped you off at the beginning with that. But anyway, this is an all Army panel, which I don't think I've had the show before. Charlotte, you're up.
See a battle. It's good to see you on the panel. So I think we would be remiss not to talk about the Super Bowl tonight.
The big game.
Interesting fact. So we are likely going to hit something. Yeah, the big game. We're likely
can't say the big game, so I'm going to trademark hits.
125 tonight. So for the first time, the Super Bowl will be in the estimated range of the total number of people who watched the Apollo moon landing.
Ah.
Wow.
That's a weird stat. Yeah, kind of doubt it. Well, I live in Missouri, so I've got Kansas City. And we don't have they got rid of our football team in St. Louis, which is a thing, which we won't get into because there's bitterness there. The Rams are in LA now. The Rams are your team now, Sabrina, by the way, which is
Hey,
fine.
that's fair. I'm rooting for the Eagles, though. Just to be clear.
Oh, you're an Eagles? Are you an Eagles stan? Sabrina, do you have an opinion on this at all?
Okay, so
There you go.
I'm not illiterate on a lot of things, but when it comes to sports,
But the Eagles are where my loyalties lie.
Sabrina? Yep.
yeah, I'm not illiterate on a lot of things, but when it comes to sports, I'm a little sports illiterate. So what I heard was, oh, I'm going to watch the Kendrick concert. The Kendrick Lamar concert.
That's fine.
That's what I heard.
Hence the reason for Charlotte Stats, I think. Yeah, there's Charlotte Stats right there. That's going to be a Kendrick concert with some sports around it, which I think is probably what my partner will watch. I'm very blessed because my partner will let me watch these things, and she's just glad that football's done. So because that is
one of the best writers in my generation is Kendrick Lamar, and it's not even close.
Oh wow! I mean, this man is, and we actually share a birthday. I just feel so blessed.
Well, there you go. Well, all right. Well, there you go. All right, JJ, bring the panel back. The picks.
Oh,
Picks. I see a puppy. All right. That's a three's kind of serious. I guess we got somebody pick. Sabrina, you're up.
Okay. Well, because you brought it up, should I do Army life?
Yes.
I know.
Yes. And you can be honest, because I heard a rumor you didn't love it.
Okay.
Tell us why you hated Army life. It's okay. Our feelings aren't hurt. I stayed. I went. I know you guys went. I went to West Point. I got that, and I always joked. The only reason I graduated because I kept putting off quitting, and then I actually every semester I put off quitting because I hated it, and I ended up graduating by accident. So anyway, it's okay. Sabrina, what about you?
So my husband, he was an infantryman in the Army.
Like Charlotte?
Oh, fantastic. And we were stationed at Fort Campbell.
When?
Yes.
When were you at Fort Campbell?
So we were there, I think we got there 2009.
Okay.
Yeah, so 2009, and my husband went to Afghanistan and everything. And so I also need to put it into perspective. I am born and raised in New York City. And my husband tells me after getting out of basic training, we are going to Kentucky. And I'm like, yes. What are you talking about? And I immediately got scared. The first question, and I'm going to be very honest, are there Black people in Kentucky? Oh my God, where are you taking me right now? What is it? And like my mother was nervous for me, everything. And so, we get there. I actually had a great time. I'm not going to lie. Like I had a great time. I met some really amazing people. I worked as an actor out of Nashville because as you know, it's really in Clarksville, Tennessee, not really Kentucky. And so I was still able to kind of get work and the relationships that I kind of gained while I was there are like lifelong relationships. And I feel really fortunate about. But when it came to the military, here was the issue that I had. It was a couple, and this is more family issues, right? My husband also joined kind of later in life. I think he was like 29, so, right? Wow. And you have people who are higher ranked than him who are like 19. Yes. What do you know about, this is not to make anybody feel good, but your frontal lobe's not developed. You really don't know that much about life yet. You just haven't experienced life. And we already came in with 2 children. And so there were things that were told to him as if he was young, but he was already a married man with children. And I think there needed to be a little bit more education when it came to that. The other thing, specifically as an Army wife, sometimes women think that their husband's jobs are their jobs. And I was very vocal to let people know that's my husband's job. That is his rank. You will not come at me like that. You will not talk to me like that. That is not my job, and I don't care.
I understand. I spent 7 years at Fort Campbell. That was actually my majority of my career was at Campbell. Well, right there. That's if you recognize the Blackhawk, you can't see it in your screen, but I have a
Oh no.
Blackhawk behind me. I spent. I was there in 93 after Ranger School to 95, and then came back 02 to 06, and so the 101st is my home, my second home in the Army. Charlotte, did you do 100? Did you do the 101st? I don't remember. You were old guard your whole career,
No,
weren't you?
no. So yeah, I was old guard, and I'm so sorry again that there's like a 5-second delay, so it's hard to make it up right. I apologize. But I did infantry basic, and then I spent my enlisted time at 3rd U.S. Infantry Regiment. But Sabrina's absolutely right. There are cultural issues within Army life that are fascinating that the rest of the country doesn't know about. So, for example, the enlisted officer divide goes beyond the unit, and it affects family life as well.
Yeah.
So, based on your rank, you live in different parts of the base.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I lived on Fort Hood, and my stepfather was enlisted, so we lived in McNair. But most of the officers' kids lived, I believe, in where was it? I forget the name of the village, but they lived in a different part of base, in nicer houses, quite frankly. And so you go to school, and there are the enlisted kids and the officers' kids, and it's not as prevalent, but some of the officers' kids definitely had like more of an ego.
Yeah.
Because, their parent was like a colonel or whatever, and it's like, I don't give a shit that your parent's a colonel. I'm still gonna, kick your ass on the playground. So
those are my kids. Thanks very much. But yeah, it was my kids got so much out of it. It's funny how it makes you one, you realize, like, one thing, our family's very close, right? Because I used to tell the kids, like, when we move, this is it, everybody, they're coming in our truck, when we get to our new place. So the kids are really close. And then, it's funny how, for me, since I had a long career, I had 22 years, each of my 4 children had like their own home. So my oldest daughter, Amber, spent most of her formative years at Fort Campbell. She even worked in the stables there. If there's stables at Fort Campbell. She actually met her husband at the stables. Then they were 16 working at the stables at Fort Campbell. So that's how my daughter met, and he was the sergeant major's daughter or son. That's how my daughter met her husband, was the stable. Yeah, so she's my Tennessee girl. And then I've got Dylan's more my son. He's more of a Atlanta guy, because we were at Fort McPherson outside of Atlanta. And then the 2 youngest kids are sort of DC kids. So each of your military children have that. It's a unique life. It's a unique life. Well, guys, I've kept you long. I've kept you for a while. I really appreciate your time. This is great. Sabrina, what a lovely time to meet you. Keep up your good. Congratulations on the new film. Keep us posted on how that goes. And where can people find you specifically, Sabrina? And then we'll ask Charlotte after you.
Oh, sure. So I'm on Instagram at official Sebrina Purcell. So that's the only social media that I'm really on. I do have a TikTok, but I'm not. I'll leave that for my kids. I'm pretty much on Instagram. So if you want to find me, that's where you can find me.
We'll put in the blurb. Charlotte, where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been such a joy just being with y'all.
I'm glad. It's Charlotte's Web Thoughts. It's a Substack. You want to follow her? It's definitely worth writing. We're gonna plug your Substack, whether you like it or not, Charlotte.
You'll Google it. In fact, you can just Google it, Charlotte's Web Thoughts, and it pops right up.
Yep, it's first thing. So, ladies, thank you for joining me. Congratulations. Thanks for your time. Even have to thank Charlotte, as always. Thanks for working through technology with us. One of these days, it's going to be super easy, I promise. Thanks. Oh man, well, back to the grind here. We've got a lot to talk about. So, at the beginning of the hour, we talked about what you can do and what everybody can do, and the key we're finding is, as we said, as Senator Rochester said, is we've all got to get in the fight. So I thought, what a great juxtaposition with that, to have the senator who's in the fight, but also someone who's actually organizing and getting us in the fight, to include lawsuits, to include getting groups set up, getting up texting campaigns, organizing protests. And that, of course, is Indivisible. Indivisible was formed back in, I think, 2016, just as Donald Trump took office. And it was co-founded by actually a married couple who were former campaign staffers and joined together to fund the organization. We're so thrilled to have Leah Greenberg join us. Leah, of course, is the co-founder of Indivisible. So it's a busy time, as you know, so it was hard catching up with her. So we were able to catch up with Leah on Friday in between running the protest and everything else. And so Leah now joined us. Leah, welcome. Let's welcome Leah Greenberg to the show. Leah, welcome to the show. So glad to have you. I understand you're not even at home. You took time out in your busy schedule to hang out with us. So thanks for joining on Democracy Sunday. I appreciate it.
Oh, so glad to be here.
I guess we'll start off with the basic question for those who don't know. I'm sure there are people still out there that don't know. Who is Indivisible and what do you guys do?
Well, Indivisible got started in 2016, shortly after Donald Trump was elected. My husband and I were both former congressional staffers. We wrote a guide to how you can organize locally to make Congress listen to you. At that point, we put it online as a Google Doc. We called it Indivisible, a practical guide.
I remember it.
And thousands and thousands of people started picking up the guide and bringing together communities and forming groups and putting it into action. And so we created an organization to support this incredible grassroots movement of people who are taking on leadership and fighting the good fight all over the country on their home turf.
And here we are again. I think I of course the first time was a Lincoln Project guy, and I wasn't even in politics in 2016, but I was in DC as a public advocate. So we're back. You guys have sort of kind of put your body armor back on and got back in the fight. I mean, we're about 3 weeks into this. Tomorrow will be 3 weeks. I mean, it's a little crazy, isn't it? Are you seeing a bit crazier than we expected, isn't it?
Well, heading in that this is what they're going to do, right? This is their strategy. They've always been clear. They plan to unleash this kind of shock and awe approach where they go really, really fast, where they ignore the basic political principles, where they ignore basic law. We know that heading in, and that doesn't mean that you can really feel and prepare for it on an emotional level the way that it's going to land.
Yeah, I had Congressman Jared Huffman on the show last week, and he and I had met in June to talk about the Project 2025 task force that he was leading. And after that is when kind of Elon Musk popped onto the scene, really. And we didn't even talk about Elon Musk back in June. And now Elon Musk is running amok about our government, kind of going crazy. One of the things we hear a lot, and I was going to drop this on you, but I don't know if you saw the Politico magazine article this week where Rahm Emanuel and David Axelrod and James Carville, well, they're doing the wrong thing by going after USAID, defending USAID. Nobody cares about foreign aid. And one of my points is, no, it's talk about dismantling a government, an agency that was formed by law in 1961. I'm sure you're hearing a lot. We can't react to everything, but it almost feels like a reaction to react to nothing, isn't it? I mean, the fact is we have to react to some things, don't we?
Yeah, well, here's what I would say. I think at the heart of all this, what we've got is a fight over whether the separation of powers even exists anymore, right?
Right.
We are talking about the president saying, I don't have to listen to any of the legislation Congress has passed. I don't have to listen to the budgets that Congress has passed. I am going to put the richest man in the world personally in charge of deciding which programs that Congress has authorized are actually going to continue to exist and who is going to get their Social Security checks. And so I think that we have to think about this all as one interconnected fight that is essentially about, does Donald Trump get to govern as a king? Does Elon Musk get to have access to your personal data and your personal funds? It's all linked together. And so I think, when we say, oh, it's just USAID, no, it's this bigger fight about the authorities that Donald Trump is attempting to seize for himself and for his pet billionaire.
Yeah, and the ability to do that with people who are unvetted, uncleared, no actual background checks. We saw that this week. The one guy, Big Balls, who was kicked out. Who got, you were a congressional staffer. You said that earlier. Like, I was a government spokesman. I mean, it's shocking to see the people running amok, isn't it? I mean, these people have no business in government.
I mean, my goodness, I was in the State Department. I know what happens if you mishandle classified information. You go to jail. Right. Like, the fact that they are behaving with such extraordinary, total disregard for any kind of norms, protocols, stuff that's put in place to keep people from getting killed, right? Stuff that's put in place to keep the government functioning and, like, very basic functions that are really necessary for our well-being moving. It's fabulously irresponsible. It's fabulously callous, and it's going to have really incredibly damaging real life impacts for people if it is not stopped immediately.
Yeah, and the USAID stuff doesn't matter. I mean, for me, it's been remarkable. I'm an Iraq veteran. One of my former interpreters from Iraq lives in Kirkuk, and he worked for a UN program. Guess what? USAID funded it, and he's reached out to me right away saying, "Fred, what am I going to do?" And I got nothing for him. I mean, it is, these aren't little things. Lives are at stake as they do these things. And that's just USAID. That's before we start talking about programs we want to cut here, right? I mean, this isn't just an exercise in theory. It's real world impact, isn't it?
That's right. Well, and I think what we saw with the federal funding freeze that they tried to pull a week and a half ago, right? They sent out this OMB memo. They say all federal funding programs are on hold right now, start indefinitely. That was something where there was a massive immediate backlash, right? Like thousands and thousands of people all immediately contacted their elected officials. There was such an overwhelming and immediate pushback that they said, oh, we got to walk this back, and we've got to do it surreptitiously. We've got to kind of do this under the radar rather than doing it all at once at the same time. They didn't give up on the idea. They just switched to this plan of putting Elon Musk in charge of the Treasury and sending him into various agencies and having him take a wrecking ball for them. But fundamentally, they're still trying to gut the programs that you and I rely on, the stuff that feeds kids, the stuff that pays student loans, the stuff that takes care of seniors, healthcare, and Social Security. They're coming
Veterans.
for all of that. And veterans,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yep, they're coming for all of it.
Yeah, and there's no question about it. They've been very honest. On my main show, on Democracy with FPWellman, we have on the Midas Touch Network, I talked with a gentleman, Gil Duran, who writes about this movement, the Peter Thiel philosophy of breaking the governments and replacing them essentially with private enterprise, right? And it's so dystopian, but I was watching and I was like, holy shit, this interview made me super depressed, bro. I mean, I'm sure you're seeing the same thing.
Well, I think, look, if you look back at what Elon Musk has done, he saw, think of it in kind of the private equity model. He saw something, he swooped in, he paid the money to win the election. And now, as far as he's concerned, he owns the United States, and he's taking a wrecking ball to our institutions, to our services, to the things that you and I rely on.
And what's really insidious and terrifying to me is the way he's using his platform, his social network that he owns. I saw an ad as we were getting ready to talk. I think it came out Friday, where talking about where he's going to buy Super Bowl ads, like $40 million to Super Bowl ads to smear. I mean, so a billionaire is basically propagandizing the United States. It's his country. I mean, it's terrifying, isn't it?
Well, look, I think that, it's long been said, you can have this level of concentrated wealth or you can have democracy, but you can't have both. And he is just going out of his way to prove it every day to us.
I guess the big important thing, the reason I want to talk to you too is, not a day goes by that people don't reach out to me and say, Fred, holy shit, what do I do? And I obviously I follow you guys like, well, they know. And you started off with a guide on how you get involved. You've also given guides like to the Senate. I caught the Senate list. You made a great list. I mentioned already that Lisa Blunt Rochester, one of my favorite people, is going to be joining us later in the show. You put out a list of, hey, United States Senate, here's what you can do, and can you hit some of the highlight? I mean, my favorite part, I think I saw an interview with you said, well, pretend you're Mitch McConnell, right? I mean, it's got to be weird for Dems, but I guess I could say another question, we'll just mix them together, was it does feel like opposition started growing this week. And part of that is like Chris Murphy, Lisa Blunt Rochester. Do you see them starting to act like Mitch McConnell and those ideas that you guys have?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would say the opposition is definitely growing. We collectively, with some of our partners, held a mass movement call on Sunday night. We had about 50,000 people on the line. A couple 100,000 have now viewed it since then. We called for in-person actions. We've seen about 250 different groups around the country stage in-person visits and protests of Senate offices in, I think, all but 2 or 3 states at this point. We have seen, so we've seen this big, and obviously DC, there's been big protests. We've seen a big outpouring over the course of this week as people are really getting up and running. I think that there was kind of this sense of, it's a little bit quiet. What we saw organizationally when we were talking to indivisibles around the country was people were getting organized. You got to have some first meetings. You got to onboard those people before you start showing up and showing your strength. And now folks are really in it. And so I definitely think we have seen that. And I think we've seen this, that as that's happening, members of Congress are getting braver too, right? It's a revolving cycle, or it's a virtuous cycle. When the grassroots is showing up, Democratic members of Congress understand that they've got people who will have their back if they are brave. I think Chris Murphy has been really outspoken this whole time about the fact that we cannot treat this as business as usual. It's been great to see Lisa Blunt Rochester saying that she is going to blanket refuse to confirm or vote against all of the upcoming Trump nominees.
Yep.
I think we've seen folks like Max Frost in the House turn into a real leader in pushing the oversight responsibilities that these folks have with the agencies that Elon Musk is taking over. We are definitely seeing both Congress and the grassroots start to or Democratic members of Congress, I should say, and the grassroots start to move into an oppositional posture. And we need to keep that up because fundamentally, most Americans do not have super strong and deeply held understandings of and beliefs about the separation of powers. The way they know that something is a constitutional crisis is a lot of people are telling them that it is a constitutional crisis and behaving like it is a constitutional crisis. If we are operating on business as usual, everybody's going to assume it's business as usual. We actually have to do something different if we want people to understand the scope of the situation we're in.
I could agree more. And optics does matter. Large crowds does matter. And along those lines, something else that matters is speaking out, right? I mean, I've seen you talk, and I'm a big fan of it. It does matter to call your congressman, call your rep, call your senator, right? You guys have been organizing those calls. I mean, you were a congressional staffer. You've seen it yourself. Is it good? I mean, people ask me all the time, it seems like such a waste of time, Fred. Is it a waste of time?
It's so funny because I understand where people are coming from when they say, "Oh, I called already." It is so thoroughly not a waste of time. The very first thing that a member of Congress tells us when we say, "Hey, why did you take that crappy vote? Why weren't you out there on this issue?" is they say, "I didn't get any calls about it," or calls were all running the other way more often. Yeah. Right. And so they use the number of calls that they get into their offices as a barometer for how much support they have on an issue. And, the thing about elected officials is they're always thinking about how strong is the ground that they're standing on. They are always thinking, how much support do I have? If I go hard here, are people going to be behind me, or am I going to make a bunch of enemies for no good reason? Even the great and amazing elected officials, they have to pay attention to, how firm the ground they're on is, because that's how they stay in office to do more good things. And so if you are a constituent and you are contacting them on a regular basis to say either, I want you to do this, or I don't want you to do this, and then following up afterwards to say, hey, I saw that you did this. Thank you. Or, hey, I saw that you did that. I do not like that. Making sure that they know that you're tracking what they're actually doing, you can actually have a really significant impact on what they do, how they behave, the opportunities they jump at, the things they pass up, the statements they make. There's a lot of power in just being regularly in contact with your elected officials.
I agree, and we saw, I think Axios had a story midweek about how the Democrats are getting record numbers of calls saying, "Get in the fight. What are you doing?" And some were like, "Oh, some staff, typical anonymous staffer. We all know them. They're like, oh, they're being stirred up by neoliberals on Blue Sky." Which might have been me, but neither way, which is fine. I'll accept that, but you're right. It does matter. I mean, they need to hear from us that sitting by the wayside and holding a boring ass press conference ain't enough, is it?
Yeah. Well, and I think, I'm just going to be candid. I think some Democrats have had an idea that they'll sort of sit back and let Trump knock himself out during this time. Yeah. And I think it's been really confusing for constituents, right? Because we collectively, as an ecosystem, we were telling people right up until the election, this is a threat to democracy. This man is a fascist. If your elected official immediately after that goes to, oh, well, we lost the election, so I guess we'll work with them, then you're going to be confused. You're going to call and say, hey, what the hell is happening here? I want you to fight back. So I think fundamentally, the way that we're going to actually, if folks don't like the calls, get in the fight with people. Tell them that you're as equally upset. Go back to your district. Talk to them. Talk to your constituents about what is happening. Raise the alarm. That is how we are all going to collectively move forward together. We want to be in partnership with these folks, but we need them in the fight.
Right, and it takes motivation, and you're right. It takes backbone and backing. They need to know that we're going to have them. They'll get, let's be honest, and they'll get the donations, they'll get the votes, and the time comes when they do put their neck out there a bit, and I think that's the key. I guess it's always the same thing. It's how can average people step up? How can a person watch a show? How do they get involved? What's an everyday anti-fascism action that, we talked about calling. What else?
Well, we do. So if you want regular up to the minute action items and alerts, definitely join our email list. We send out a weekly activism to do newsletter that kind of covers, based on where you live, what are your highest impact things that you can do that week. But the other thing that I would really recommend for folks who are upset happening and not sure what they can do is figure out how you can get in community locally with other people who feel the same way and start organizing and working together. Indivisible groups are all over the country. We've got about 1,200 groups currently active around the country in every single state. These are folks who are regular people who are really, really upset about what is happening and who are finding and building their power together. They are good communities to make some new friends. They are good places to find a way to take action. So if you are like, I just have to figure out something to do, really encourage you to also look up your local Indivisible group and see if you can get involved.
I love it. That's it. And we are of one mind. I mean, there are ways to find a way to get involved. There's places you can get involved, and that's the key. You're right. If we've been saying it's going to be honestly, between you, I don't know how you felt. I think this is worse than I expected. I think what's happening is actually worse than I thought. And I think what you said earlier was really key, that so many Democrats thought, well, we'll just let him fail like last time. There was really a lot of people who thought it would be like last time. And many of us said, no. They have a plan. And unfortunately, I think we were right.
Yeah. I mean, I guess what I would say is that I think if there were a range of different ways they could have approached the first couple of weeks, this is certainly on the high end of ambition, aggression, speed, determination to take on a lot of targets at the same time. And that is both terrifying, but it's also an opening, right? Because when you open up a bunch of fronts in a conflict at the same time, we can all come together and organize to fight back. And so I think we've got to be, collectively reaching in and finding our own strength, and then reaching out to unconventional allies, people who are also experiencing the chaos and the disruptions and the things that are coming out of Washington, and saying, this is not what we were supposed to have. This is not this is not how things are supposed to be.
Well, I love it. This is great. Thank you for your time. Thanks for taking time while you're busy. You're not even at home, but we really appreciate all you're doing. I hope you'll stay in touch. We'll grab you again soon to talk more, but thanks for doing your work. We're all in this together, I guess, right?
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for all you do.
Thank you. Great conversation. As I mentioned, we recorded on Friday, and because that's how you get in. But there's so much you can do. And I'm seeing the chat. You guys are doing great. I see everybody talk about protests. I think we're at that point. One of the things I've been saying, and I was happy. So I'm going to be very honest. I was very happy to see the senators and congressmen and others come out to USAID, come out and protest, seeing Maxwell Frost pounding on the door of the Department of Education. And I've seen some of my peers in politics and just regular folks say, oh, it's just performative. But let's understand something, you guys. Performative does matter. Okay. I'll give you an example. I may have mentioned it last week. I'm not sure if I did or not, but there was a poll about immigration that came out. Donald Trump's position on immigration, his fight on the immigration issue, right before he took office. And he was up by like plus 10 or some ridiculous number. After they did all the filming of the Marines landing at the border and the V-22 Ospreys and the trucks and all, it actually went up to 22%. And I can tell you why. Even knowing their arrests aren't actually going up. They're showing that they're not actually arresting that many people, but they're doing a lot of performative bullshit. But I hate to tell you guys this, performative bullshit does actually work. And it does get people's attention because we need them to see, especially when you got somebody like Trump who lives on TV. It actually does matter for people to see action being taken. I don't want to hear, and it's got to be something more than just a press conference or a sternly worded speech. Okay. I mean, I love, God bless Chuck Schumer, but a glass at the end of his nose reading an 11-page speech, one page after another. We need a lot more than that. They need to know that we see them. They need to know that it's not business as usual. There's an op-ed, I think JJ could throw it up, that Karen Tumulty had a great op-ed this week with the Washington Post. And she said, and I love what she said, she made it clear, because this has now gone beyond a constitutional crisis and become a constitutional collapse. And nowhere did the founding fathers ever think that an entire Congress would abdicate their Article 1 powers and simply let the executive branch bulldoze everything. It's what we show. That's why I showed the video at the top of the show. That's where we're at, you guys, that the Congress is just walking away saying, well, it's just an audit, when entire swaths of the government, when Elon Musk, a billionaire who has not been vetted by anyone in the government, just tweets out CFPB, RIP, a major organization has been protecting us. Yes, it costs $800 million, but it's by government estimate, by neutral estimates, it saved consumers over $21 billion. And the billionaire just decided to delete the fucking thing. Okay. Now the Republican Party has either been fully bought off or intimidated into just silence. I saw someone say, a Democratic representative said that he spoke to some of his congressional colleagues and they flat out said they're scared for their lives. not being primaried. They're literally scared for their lives to take on Elon and the MAGA crowd. Think about that. You get elected, you think you're powerful, and you don't want to do anything because you're scared. Our founding fathers never imagined a stake were there. And then you've got the jackasses like John Neely Kennedy out there cheering for it with his bullshit fake Louisiana accent that he uses, and others. Mike Johnson, as we saw at the top video, saying, hey, it's all going great. The executive's allowed to do this. The idea these weak people are saying this and there's been no oversight of them. That is literally their duty. What bothered me a lot about what Speaker Johnson said is there's been no oversight. There's been no oversight. Bullshit. That's their job. James Comer has been cheering all this, saying there's been no oversight of the federal government. He literally chairs the oversight committee. If there's been no oversight of the federal government, especially for the last 2 years, that's on you. You jackasses decided to pursue Hunter Biden instead of the actual job we hired you for. So now Elon Musk is in there burning the goddamn thing to the ground. You know, if they're mad, they look in the goddamn mirror. So right now, some 19-year-old kid named Big Balls on LinkedIn has been accessing all the treasury records of the United States government. Literally 25% of our economy under some kid mucking the fuck about. So I don't believe for 1 second. And then what bothers me the most is then Musk picks and chooses, sends out tweets about the corruption they've discovered. They haven't discovered any fucking corruption, you guys, okay? The whole thing about Politico getting paid and New York Times being paid, those are legal subscriptions. I was a public affairs officer in the United States Army. Do you know how I track the news? Well, you can't do it through a freaking paywall. So my organization paid for subscription of all the major newspapers. No shit. How else am I going to get access to the news that I have to tell my bosses, hey, guess what? New York Times just did an expose on us, which happened. So we paid for – that's all they did. When you consolidate that in the Treasury in a database that says, my God, $80 million is spent on the media. Well, no shit, to buy subscriptions. But they make it sound like it's some nefarious thing, and there you are. Look, I'm not saying the federal government's perfect. I was in the federal government for most of my adult life, okay? It's far from perfect. The contracting system is a train wreck, okay? Let's be honest. Even for us with veterans, set-asides, and everything else, it's still a mess. There's still people gaming the system. But we've given one of the United States' biggest contractors, SpaceX, access to all the records of every other freaking contractor. This is against the law. And they know it's against the law. And Congress knows it's against the law. But they've been cowed and terrorized into silence. So we're going to have to cow them back. We're going to have to, I wouldn't say terrorize them. I'm not going to use that word. But we're going to give them a fright and let them know that we're paying attention, y'all. We're not taking this sitting down. We have gone beyond anything. I love what said. I love that Lisa Blunt Rochester, Senator Blunt Rochester came here and said, you know, I came to the Senate planning on introducing bills about climate change, but she says, but this is more important. Wasn't that inspiring to hear a senator say that? That she understands this is business as usual. This isn't business as usual. This is business to save our Constitution, save our country. Because I'm telling you, folks, what's going to happen is they're going to get rid of shit like USAID, and billions of dollars are going to be lost from our economy. Farmers, people are going to lose jobs. And by the time our courts get around to it, they're going to say, sorry, judge, it's already been done. Oops, I guess it's moot now. So we, the people, have to stand up. So call your senators. You heard what Leah said. It does matter. Call your senators. Call your congressman. It doesn't necessarily do any good to send you guys to different ones that don't represent you. But if they represent you, call them and hold them accountable. I'm blessed. I've got Josh Hawley and Eric Schmidt, two of the biggest assholes on the planet, but we're going to call them and let sure they know that we know they're failing us. So that's what we got to do. The outrageous acts that are occurring. This is a 5-alarm fire moment, you guys. It really is. I'd love to say it's not, but it is. And we have to get involved. So with having said that, as you guys, I see you in the chat talking about our technical glitches, man, live is fun. And we're all doing this for free. So we love you. So the way you pay us back and the way you pay Katie back, you pay JJ back is really simple. I need you to go to the YouTube channel. I need you to hit subscribe. I know maybe you're watching on Twitter, maybe you're watching on Facebook, wherever you are, surf on over to On Democracy channel and hit subscribe for our channel, because we're growing the channel very nicely. We're doing some cool stuff. We've got a new show coming out really soon. We're really excited to introduce to you. You're going to love. We've got exclusive. I did a hot take the other day about the outrageous actions at West Point, where they disbanded all the clubs that represented women and minorities, to include the Society of Black Engineers, which has been around for 50 years, because they're DEI. So we're going to hold them accountable. We're going to hold them, and you can be a part of that. The easiest way to do that by far is come on over, hit subscribe on that YouTube channel to help us out. In the meantime, you can subscribe to our Substack, FPWellman.substack.com. Man, that thing's been blowing up too. I'm writing almost daily now, every other day, talk about these issues like Elon Musk attacking our government and other things. Those have been doing really well. I hope you'll join us there. It's a great way to keep track of what we're up to. Follow me on Blue Sky at FPWellman. Follow me on Instagram, FPWellman Official. Follow the show on Blue Sky. We've got an On Democracy channel, Blue Sky, just everywhere in the meantime. And the most important thing, to grow that audience, which is well over 2,000 today because of you guys across all the channels, is tell your friends. Say, hey, there's this great new Sunday show, and it's much better than NBC, even with technical glitches. It's much better than Meet the Press. Tell your friends, join us. Much better. What? Just we got this. Have them join us. Come on over and hang out with us. Tell your friends, tell your family. Push the show. You'll see me pushing out like previews. As soon as we get the guest booked, we start pushing out the preview, who's coming. Share those with your friends and neighbors. We would love to have a bigger audience. You can see how wonderful our big community is growing. I love seeing so many familiar faces and names in the freaking over here in this. I've got the chat up right now, and I see you guys, and it matters, especially cheering on JJ and Katie in the background, who are making me look at least semi good, which is never easy. That I won't keep any longer. It's been a great show with great guests. We've already got some great guests. Like Kevin Cruz is going to join us next week. The incredible historian is going to join us. We've got another great actor. I mean, it just keeps getting better, you guys. We've got another great elected official going to join us, just like the regular shows. Be here next Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern and 8 a.m. Pacific for more On Democracy Sunday. We love talking to you guys. Thanks for being part of our family. We will see you again next week.